Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today you are the curator of an ever-expanding art gallery, and although you have fine taste in art, you'll need to pay close attention to what your visitors want to see, like abstract, landscape, portrait, or still life. You'll be building your art gallery with new exhibits, and you'll be trying to be the curator with the most prestigious gallery in the end. ArtSee is for 2 to 5 players, plays in 30 minutes, is for ages 12 and up, and published by Renegade Game Studios. Today, we'll be doing a rule school where I'll teach you how to set up and play the game so that you don't have to read the rulebook yourself. Now, I've placed timestamps below me in the description of this video just in case you want to jump to a specific section of the rules. Well, without further ado, let's get started. ArtSee is a 2 to 5 player tableau building card game where you're trying to have the most prestigious gallery in the end. You'll be adding exhibits to your galleries and earning prestige for the visitors that were already there. But there's lots of interaction because the types of galleries you place also bring popularity to those types of galleries from your opponents and bring them visitors. But not only do those visitors gain you prestige, so do the types of art that this is pointing to, like our gallery that has these landscape paintings. And if you gained enough prestige, you can claim a masterpiece, but you have to watch out because once you have a certain type, you cannot get another one later. And these masterpieces will allow you to claim prestige possibly now and at the end of the game. And other players need to be careful too because when you add an exhibit, it might be pointing to their gallery and you'll be getting points for the paintings that match this type, like portraits. So you're trying to build the most prestigious gallery but also gain the benefits of others. Each player is going to be able to select their color. They'll take all of the visitor pawns of their selected color and place them in front of them for now. If you're playing with less than 5 players, any colors not selected can be removed from the game and placed back in the box. Then, depending on the amount of players in the game, as shown here on the left, you'll keep only a certain amount of those visitors. For example, if we're playing with 3 players like here, you'll keep only 7, returning the others to the box. You'll then separate out all the prestige tokens by value, and you'll put them off to the side but where everyone can still reach them. You're going to separate out all the cards into 2 different exhibit decks. All the cards with a black border are the starting exhibit deck, and all the cards with the white border are the main exhibit deck. You'll separate them out like that. You'll shuffle each deck separately. You'll deal 2 cards from the starting deck, which is the black bordered cards, to each player. And these cards will be placed face up right in front of them in their gallery, side by side like this. Each player will also get 3 cards from the starting deck, the one with the black borders, face down to them. Now these cards, the player who gets them can actually look at the other sides of them, but the other players must be able to see the backs of the cards because the colors of these are important. It gives them some information that we'll tell you about later. Now these cards, and all cards you receive in the game, go into your hand, but I have them laid out here on the table just so you can see the borders of the cards well. After all players have those, you can remove the rest of the starting exhibit deck back to the box. Then, with the main exhibit deck with the white borders, you're going to remove a certain amount of cards depending on the table you see here to the left. For example, with 3 players, we're going to remove 3 random cards of each category. Category being the 4 different colors in the game, which are blue, green, red, and yellow. So in this case, we've removed 3 random of each of them from here. These will get removed and placed back in the box. And as we'll describe later, those 4 colors represent the 4 different types of art in the game. Then you'll split the rest of that main exhibit deck into 2 even decks in the middle of the table where everyone can reach them. Next, you're going to separate out these masterpiece tokens by category, which essentially is color, and place them in the center of the play area. Now, within each category, you're going to stack them so it has the highest number on top, and then the lowest ones will go down just like that. And so these 4 types of art is red is abstract, yellow is portrait, green is landscape, and blue is still life. You'll now determine the star player by figuring out which player has seen the most famous piece of art in person, or you can choose randomly. The object of the game is to have the most prestigious gallery at the end, and you'll be earning these prestige tokens to count that. You'll be gaining prestige by claiming masterpieces of different art types, depending on how many visitors you have and how many pieces of art you have of that type in your gallery. And we'll talk about the details of scoring that prestige later. Now, the game is played over a series of turns, and beginning with the start player and going clockwise, each player's turn is made up of 5 different phases. Now the first phase of your turn is to play a card. If you remember, you were dealt 3 cards to start the game. Now remember, you can see these, you can look at the back sides of these, but you don't want the opponents to see them. Now remember, everyone starts with 2 cards face up in their gallery, but to facilitate this teaching example, I'm going to fast forward just a little bit to a turn in the future. So let's say our turn looks like this. I'm going to get to how to place cards and how these visitors come out in this example. Now when placing a card in your gallery, you can place it on any of the columns that are already there, and you'll do so by placing it at the bottom of that column like this, covering up the second bottom half of that card just like this. Now you can add it to any of the columns in your gallery, even if it has visitors on it, or you can start a new column. And doing so, you have to place it all the way to the right of all your columns or all the way to the left of all your columns. You cannot split up and place in between any columns that are already there. But for this example, I'm going to place it on one of my columns that I already have. I'm going to place it on this one. Now, since there's visitors there, we'll talk about how you get these in just a moment. We're going to place this right over here. Just for now, we're going to just place these here because I'm going to explain what these do in just a moment. Because once I've placed this card, the second step is to welcome visitors. And at this point, all of the opponents, not you, but all your opponents are going to gain a visitor if they want to for the color of this gallery that I just placed here. So this is sort of the green, which is the landscape. So let's say this is another player's gallery. What we're going to look for is, for the columns, we look at the top card and all of their columns and see if any of those have the same featured category. In this case, it was that green landscape, and they have one. For each of those that is the top card, they may, but are not forced to, place a visitor in their gallery, and they'll place it right on the person like this. Normally, you're going to try to place them on there. And they do this for all of them. So if this one happened to have been a green landscape, they could place it there as well. Now we're back to our gallery, and remember, when welcoming visitors, only the opponents do it. We don't get to do that. But let's talk about what these visitors do, because the next step of your turn is earning prestige. Now the first thing you do is, if you covered a card that had visitors on it like this, these are going to be worth 2 prestige. So for each of these, you'd put these back in your supply, and you'd gain 1 prestige from the supply for each visitor that you remove that way. Then we're going to look at the arrow of the card we just placed, which is this one, and the type of featured category, which is the green landscape, and it's going to point to the right. So we look to the column just to the right here, and we're going to look for this many pieces of art. Here we have 1, 2. So we're also going to earn 2 more prestige. And prestige I've placed here for now, but it's just in a pile in front of you. Now let me show you a different example. We have only 2 columns right now. Let's say instead we had placed it on this column. Well, we played a card, everyone else would welcome visitors like normal, but when earning prestige, we didn't cover any visitors here, so we didn't get any prestige for that. But this is pointing to the right for this green landscape, but we have no columns here. So what you'll do, here's our gallery. We just said what would happen if we placed the card here. This green arrow is pointing this way. We look at the column closest to us, to our neighbor in that direction. And this was the gallery of theirs that we just looked at previously. And this column for them has 2 of those types of paintings. So we would actually gain 2 prestige, even though this was pointing over to a neighbor. So what you build and what's on the edges of your columns can affect points that your neighbors will be getting. Now keep in mind, when players are playing cards, they can place them in a column that they already have or on one of the edges. So if this player no longer wanted the other player to reap benefits of their green paintings here, they could place a card here, which essentially would be blocking this specific gallery from scoring from their neighbor to their left. Now after earning prestige, the next part of your turn is to claim a masterpiece. Now you won't be able to do this until a little bit later in the game, but what you can do is, let's say we just earned that prestige for green. If we had earned at least a total of 5, we could take this masterpiece. However, doing so means that we are foregoing being able to get any more of these green landscape masterpieces later, because at most you can only have 1 of each type throughout the entire game. So if I had scored 5, I could take this, or I could wait to a subsequent turn to try to score more to get more of these, but that means it's leaving it for other players to possibly take the ones that I want before I get a chance to do so. So let's say it was a little further in the game and I placed this card on my turn. I'd be getting 2 prestige from these 2 visitors, and I'd be getting 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, a total of 7, and I would be able to get 1 of those. And let's say in this case I did decide to get it, meaning this is going to be the only green landscape masterpiece I'll be able to claim the entire game. Now when placing one of those masterpieces, you can place it Essentially, you always place it up top, but you're going to place it in between one of your columns that doesn't already have one, or on one of the edges, on the outside edges of your gallery. Now, you can only have one of these in each space that I just said, and again, you can only have one of each kind in the entire game. Now, this doesn't score you any prestige now, but at the end of the game, it will score you an amount of prestige as shown here, in this case, 2. It will also score you for having a certain amount of masterpieces, which I'll show you about in final scoring. Now, one more interesting thing about this is they actually count as a painting in both of these galleries. So if later on I were to play a card like this green arrow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it also counts as 6, so it counts as one additional one. But you gotta be careful because if you place this on the edge, then on other players' turns, let's assume this is another player's gallery, if they play this, they have the green landscape going this way, they'll get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it will count for them as well. Now, after you've possibly claimed a masterpiece, the last step of your turn is to draw a card, and if you remember, there's 2 piles of the main exhibit deck, and you can pull either one of these, keeping in mind that the back side of this card, this has yellow. This means that the featured category of this is yellow, so you know which one this is going to sort of score when you play it, but you're not sure which way the arrow is going to be. And when drawing a card, if you ever draw the last one of one of the piles, just move the top card over from the other pile. Then it would go to the player to the left. Now, this will continue going through these player turns until the last card has been drawn from both piles and all the cards have been played from all the players. Now, during final scoring, each player already has prestige that they've earned throughout the game. Now, to that amount of prestige, they're going to add the amount of prestige shown on the bottom of those masterpieces, denoted by the white prestige icons, which are each worth 1 prestige. In this case, it will be a total of 5 more for those 2 masterpieces. Now, on the backs of those masterpieces, it actually shows you how much additional prestige you'll get depending on how many different ones you have. Remember, you can only have one of each type. In this case, we have 2 different ones, so 2 different ones is 3 prestige, but if you have all 4, you can get up to 10 prestige at this spot. At this point, whoever has the most prestige is the winner. If there's a tie, the player with the most remaining visitors in their gallery will be the winner, and if it's still a tie, then they share the victory. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into ArtSee and get to the fun quicker than you normally would if you had to read the rulebook yourself. Now, if you have any further questions about the rules, I placed the link below me in the description of this video, and that's the best place to ask them, since not only will I be notified, but so will Renegade Game Studios.